Welcome to the Hindu Daily. So today we're kicking things off not with pure politics, but with regulation. Specifically, a big editorial on how big tech seems to be, well, ignoring Indian laws on drug ads. It's basically this old law versus new tech, really.
Exactly. We're talking about the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act, the DMRA from 1954. And, the concerns it addresses, they go way back, apparently, to 1927 discussions about this craze for medicinal drugs. It's fundamental public health stuff.
Right, a really foundational law. And super strict.
Yeah, it prohibits advertising any drug for a list of 54 specific conditions, things like diabetes, cancer. Doesn't matter if they claim it works.
The idea being to protect vulnerable people, I guess.
Precisely. But then the internet happened. Big tech platforms, search engines, social media, they've completely changed how this works or doesn't work.
Making it harder to police.
Exponentially harder. And, well, the platforms seem quite aware of that.
Okay, and here's where it gets pretty concerning, according to the sources. These big platforms operating in India, their policies don't properly warn Indian advertisers about breaking this DMRA law.
It's like a blind spot, almost deliberate.
Yeah, and you can do simple searches, Ayurveda blood pressure tablets or something, and boom, sponsored ads pop up. Misleading ones.
And it's not just small stuff slipping through. The sources mentioned, like, video ads from well-known godmen making huge claims.
Wow.
And even ads for, get this, cow urine-based products claiming to treat cancers.
Seriously, cow urine for cancer.
That's what's reported. And the kicker, some of this was apparently supported by a big tech company's charitable program.
Hold on. A charity arm funding ads for quack cancer cures. That goes beyond negligence, surely.
It does suggest a level of indifference, doesn't it? Especially when you look at how they operate elsewhere.
Like the U.S.
Exactly. In the U.S., their health ad policies are apparently really elaborate. Lots of pre-screening, complex rules to comply with FDA regulations. Violations there can mean actual criminal charges. Fast.
So they can police it, they just don't seem to be doing it effectively here.
That's the core of the double standard argument presented.
Okay, so why? Why the impunity in India? The analysis gives, what, 3 main reasons?
Yeah, 3 potential factors cited. First, they bring up the memory of Union Carbide in Bhopal, suggesting maybe a systemic disregard for Indian lives compared to American ones. Harsh comparison, but it's made.
Okay, what else?
Second, there's a history. Big tech apparently avoided criminal charges in a long legal battle over sex selection ads under the PNDT Act. That case dragged on for 9 years, setting a kind of precedent for non-accountability.
Right. And the third point?
Their favorite shield, claiming intermediary status, saying they're just platforms for user content.
But the article argues they're more like publishers, aren't they? Their teams sell ad space, sign contracts, take money.
Precisely. When they're actively involved in the transaction, that intermediary argument gets pretty thin.
So what's the proposed solution? How do you fix this?
The suggestion is quite firm. Register criminal complaints against the management.
Against individuals.
Yes. And compel reforms so that the key people setting policy for India are actually Indian citizens based in India and legally answerable here.
Makes sense.
And if they don't comply, the ultimate threat, revoke their intermediary immunity entirely, even for user content that would force their hand.
Okay, shifting from big tech, maybe setting its own rules, let's look at another huge regulatory interface, climate change. Specifically, this potential link between India's carbon market and the EU's carbon border tax.
Ah, yes, the CBAM linkage. This agreement, apparently from September 2025, is flagged as a potential game changer. The idea is that the carbon price Indian companies pay domestically under the Indian Carbon Market, or ICM, would be deducted from the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism levy.
So basically, if you pay a carbon price in India, you pay less carbon tax at the EU border, rewarding decarbonization here.
That's the theory, a potential breakthrough, like you said. But the editorial points out some major hurdles.
Okay, like what? Barrier number 1?
Market architecture. The EU system, the ETS, is, well, it's mature. Decades old, based on absolute emission caps, a hard limit.
Right. Tried and tested.
India's system, the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme, or CCTS, which forms the ICM, is different. Newer, more fragmented. It often relies on intensity improvements, using less carbon per unit of output or offsets, rather than a strict cap. And the CBAM needs clear ton-for-ton accounting.
So apples and oranges, almost. The EU might not see Indian credits as equivalent.
That's a real risk.
Yeah.
Especially if they're based on offsets, which the EU sometimes views skeptically. They might see them as less credible.
Got it. What's the second barrier?
Institutions and price. India apparently lacks the kind of independent regulators and registries the EU has for its ETS.
And the price difference is huge, isn't it?
Stark, yeah. The EU ETS price floats around, what, 60 to 80 euro per ton?
Okay.
Indian carbon prices cited are way lower, maybe 5 to 10 to ton.
So even if the mechanism works, the deduction would be minimal if the prices are that far apart.
Exactly. Indian exporters could end up paying their domestic costs plus almost the full CDAM levy anyway. A double burden, which obviously creates political problems back home.
Which leads to the third barrier, the political one.
Right. This is tricky. India has officially opposed the CBAM at the World Trade Organization, calling it protectionist, unilateral.
So linking markets kind of legitimizes something India has fought against.
Precisely. And it raises sovereignty questions, too. Suddenly, Brussels gets a say in whether India's domestic carbon pricing is good enough.
I see the tension there. And there's a strategic risk, too.
Definitely. If there's any political backtracking in India on compliance, say, industry pushes back hard, then exporters are immediately exposed to the full CBAM cost. It could really destabilize trade.
So, potential upside, but lots of ifs.
Big ifs. The conclusion seems to be that it could work, shielding exporters and boosting decarbonization, if India seriously beefs up its market design, and if the EU provides real technical support. Otherwise, it might just be an agreement on paper.
Okay, let's move to the opinion section now. And this is a big one, a really stark comparison between science funding in the US and China.
Yeah, the piece paints a picture of, frankly, an American retreat from science and technology leadership.
The numbers cited are pretty dramatic. We're talking major cuts. NIH funding down 21%, National Cancer Institute down 31%.
And even a proposed 56% cut the National Science Foundation budget under something called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, plus the cancellation of around 4,000 research grants. These aren't small tweaks.
And you see the human impact immediately, right? The brain drain effect.
Absolutely. The source mentions researchers leaving, like someone from Johns Hopkins going to Oxford because their fellowship got pulled, and a massive drop in international students, 150,000 fewer projected for this fall. That's not just talent loss, it's a $7 billion revenue hit for universities.
And it seems U.S. policy itself has contributed, like the China initiative.
Yes, that apparently pushed thousands of Chinese scientists back to China, directly strengthening their main competitor's S&T base.
Which contrasts sharply with China's approach.
Completely. China's strategy for 2 decades now has been consistent, strategic investment increases in science, technology, and innovation.
And the results are showing up in the rankings.
Dramatically so. The Nature Index Research Leaders rankings from late 2024 are cited. 8 of the top 10 universities globally, Chinese, the Chinese Academy of Sciences ranked above Harvard.
Wow, 8 out of 10.
And the metrics on actual output and quality are just as stark. China's lead over the U.S. in the Nature Index database, which tracks high-quality research, reportedly multiplied more than 4 times in just 1 year, 2024.
4 times in 1 year.
That's the figure given. And for the world's top 1% most cited papers between 2018 and 2020, China produced 27.2%, already edging out the U.S. at 24.9%.
And in AI, a critical field.
China's leadership seems even clearer there. Nearly 40% of all AI publications in 2021 came from China, compared to just 10% from the U.S.
So looking at overall spending on R&D.
Gross domestic expenditure on R&D, or GER, the U.S. still spent more in total in 2023, about $823 billion, versus China's $780 billion.
Okay, still ahead there.
And this is the crucial part. Look at the growth rate. China's R&D spending is growing at 8.7% annually. The U.S., just 1.7%.
That's a massive difference in trajectory.
Huge. The prediction in the piece is blunt. If these trends continue, China is likely to overtake the U.S. as the world's largest R&D spender and the leading S&T nation within, 2 to 3 years.
A fundamental shift in global power, potentially. All right, let's turn to our science section article. This one tackles something we see pop up every year, these global science rankings and the institutional bragging that follows.
Yes, the IOanities list, ranking the supposed top 2% of scientists worldwide. And yeah, every year when it comes out, you see this flurry of press releases from Indian institutions, big and small, claiming scientific excellence because some of their researchers are on it. The 2025 list apparently had over 6,200 from India.
Okay, but the article points out something really weird, a kind of disconnect.
It does. The top 10 Indian scientists on this global list, they're mostly affiliated with, lesser-known institutions, places like Muthiamal Engineering College, Government Degree College, Pulwama, not necessarily the IITs or ISC,
That is odd, but here's the bit that really makes you question the whole thing.
The Nobel laureate comparison.
Exactly. 6 of the 7 Nobel Prize winners who are also on this list ranked way, way lower, between 1,300 and nearly 29,000, than the lowest-ranked Indian scientist in that top 10 group.
Yeah, think about that. A Nobel winner ranked 28,000 places below someone else on the same list. It just doesn't compute, does it?
It really doesn't. So what is this ranking actually measuring? How is it calculated?
It's based on data from the Scopus database, using a compiled metric called the C-score. This score gives equal weight to various factors: total citations, H-index, number of papers published, and even author order, giving extra points for being the first or last author.
So it's purely quantitative. Numbers in, rank out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the article highlights some major flaws with that approach. Well, critics often say it compares apples and oranges, scientists working in completely different fields or types of institutions. More importantly, it's totally divorced from the actual content or quality or impact of the research. It's just about the numbers.
And it can be gamed?
Highly susceptible, it seems. The piece mentions things like citation rings, where groups agree to cite each other's papers excessively. And it points to the, frankly, unbelievable productivity of some highly ranked Indian scientists publishing like 1 or 2 papers per week. That just screams system manipulation to boost scores.
Right, not genuine output.
So the core takeaway is, unlike something like the Nobel Prize, which involves deep peer review and looks at actual impact, this C-score misses all that context.
It's basically just vanity.
A vanity metric, exactly what the source calls it. Good for institutional PR, maybe, but researchers should focus on doing good science, not chasing these kinds of empty numbers.
Okay, moving into our text and context section now. First up, a significant development in China, a major purge within the military leadership.
Yes, this was a big announcement on October 17th. 9 very high-ranking commanders from the People's Liberation Army, PLA, and the Central Military Commission, CMC, were kicked out of the Communist Party.
Expelled. That's serious.
It's the highest disciplinary action. The official reasons cited are violations of party discipline and suspected corruption involving extraordinarily large sums of money.
This isn't the first anti-graft campaign under Xi Jinping, but targeting people this high up.
Exactly. It includes figures like CMC Vice Chairman He Weidong, known to be a close ally of Xi. That raises serious questions about, well, military cohesion and even combat readiness.
And the article suggests it's not just about corruption, right? There's a factional element.
Definitely seems to be layered. He Nadong and some others purged, like Miao Hua, are linked to what's called the Fujian Gang. These are officials connected to Xi's time governing Fujian province, and they're often associated with China's plans regarding Taiwan.
Okay, so one faction. Is there a rival group?
Yes. The analysis points to a strong counterfaction, the Shaanxi Gang, led by the CMC's first vice chairman, Zhang Yuxia. He's apparently supported by the party's discipline inspection chief, Zhang Shengmin, the anti-corruption head honcho.
So it looks like an anti-corruption drive that also conveniently targets rivals.
That seems to be the interpretation. The scale of it, hitting such senior figures linked to one network, suggests both threads, genuine corruption concerns, and factional score settling are likely at play.
What are the implications for the military itself?
Potentially significant. High-level corruption erodes trust down the ranks. It could impact morale, discipline, and ultimately combat readiness, especially critical given the focus on the Taiwan front. The expectation is that Xi will probably respond by tightening control further, perhaps bringing more units directly under CMC command, pushing for greater ideological purity.
All right, next, we look closer to home, focusing on a concerning linguistic trend, the erosion of the Dogri language in India.
Yeah, this fits into a much larger, frankly tragic picture. India leads the world, according to UNESCO, in the number of languages nearing extinction. The statistic cited is stark. Over 220 languages lost in just the last 50 years.
And Dogri, despite getting official recognition in Jammu and Kashmir recently, it's still fading.
It seems so. It was made one of J&K's 5 official languages in 2020, which was long overdue recognition. But on the ground, the sources say it's largely absent from schools and government use. The policy isn't matching the practice.
Why is it declining? The article mentions survey results.
Yes, looking through 3 lenses. First, policy failure. Nearly half the respondents, 48%, felt the government just hadn't provided enough support.
Okay.
Second, perceived economic relevance, 43%, felt Dogri wasn't useful for getting ahead in careers. English is seen as the language of opportunity.
And the third lens reveals a worrying generational gap.
A stark one. Older people, 60+ long, reported full speaking proficiency. But among those under 20, 0% proficiency in reading and writing Dogri. 0.
Wow, that's a cliff edge.
It really is. And there's an urban-rural split, too. Writing proficiency in cities was only 4% compared to 15% in rural areas. Suggests it's fading faster in urban centers.
So what needs to happen?
Immediate action is needed. First, the article stresses the need for updated census data, which is currently held up to properly identify all endangered languages. But beyond data, there's a call to challenge the mindset, to push back against the idea that progress only speaks English, a kind of decolonization of linguistics, as the source puts it.
Okay, our final piece for this deep dive looks at the complicated, often contradictory relationship between the United States and Pakistan. The source calls it a magnificent delusion.
It's a very evocative phrase, isn't it? And timely, given the context mentioned. Pakistan's army chief, Asim Munir, making frequent trips to Washington recently, in 3 months in 2025. That always gets attention, especially in India.
And there's been some surprising rhetoric from the U.S. side, too. A shift, maybe?
A potential U-turn, yeah. The article contrasts Donald Trump's 2018 tweets slamming Pakistan for lies and deceit, despite U.S. aid, with more recent warmer comments, including rather strange suggestions about non-existent oil fields in Pakistan, and even reports of a deal involving rare earth minerals. The cycle seems to be turning again.
The article frames this relationship historically in phases, right? Always fragile.
Exactly. 2 key Cold War phases. First, 1954-1965, Pakistan was supposedly America's most allied ally. CETO membership, U-2 spy plane bases, but it collapsed during the 1965 India-Pakistan War when the U.S. imposed an arms embargo. That pushed Pakistan towards China. Partnership over.
Then phase 2, post-1979.
The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Suddenly, Pakistan was indispensable again, got $5 billion in aid. The U.S. looked the other way on Pakistan's nuclear program and its support for militants against India.
Until the Soviets left.
Then the aid got cut again under the Pressler Amendment. Utility ended, support withdrawn. See the pattern.
Yeah, purely transactional. And then came 9/11.
The peak of reluctant cooperation. Pakistan joined the war on terror, received another $18 billion. But trust was always fragile. And it completely shattered in 2011 with the discovery of Osama bin Laden hiding in Abbottabad, right near Pakistan's main military academy. That confirmed U.S. suspicions of duplicity.
And led to more sanctions or aid cuts.
Part of that recurring cycle, yes. The article points out the U.S. has actually had sanctions on Pakistan for nearly a third of their entire relationship history, 1965, 1990, 2018. It reflects this constant U.S. frustration.
It also mentions internal contradictions within Pakistan.
Deep ones. Strong anti-American, anti-Western sentiment is widespread, even while the state relies heavily on U.S. aid and IMF bailouts, often brokered with U.S. support. Think back to the U.S. Embassy being burned in 1979. And even recently, PM Shehbaz Sharif acknowledged at the UN General Assembly that militant groups on Pakistani soil are a global threat, a startling admission.
So the final assessment, magnificent delusion.
That's the conclusion. A relationship built on shifting, short-term, overlapping interests, but fundamentally undermined by deep mistrust and conflicting long-term goals. It's doomed to remain complex, unpredictable, and, well, delusional. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given those rapid shifts we discussed in U.S.-China science leadership and this perpetually volatile U.S.-Pakistan dynamic, how might these converging trends force nations like Pakistan, who rely heavily on these global partnerships, to fundamentally rethink their strategic alignments in the very near future? Something to consider.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.